the introduction of Space Marines, and today we're just going to be doing a quick cover of how a Space Marine chapter is organized. You see before you that there is a Primaris, which is the new kind of Space Marine, belonging to the Chaplain caste within a chapter. And we're going to be explaining a little bit about the specialists and then looking at the organization of a standard Space Marine chapter. Now, back during the time of the Great Crusade and all, they were formed in legions, and legion structure was widely different from legion to legion, so we won't be looking at that. We're just going to be focusing on how a chapter or a modern day Space Marine force is set up. So, let's go ahead and get started. Now, like I said, the image before you is a Space Marine chaplain. A chaplain is a spiritual guide for his fellow Space Marines. Now, while it is true that most Space Marines are not religious, they do not view the Emperor as a god like the rest of the Imperium. They do, however, confront forces of chaos as well as the Space Marines who have turned to chaos and the Space Marines who betrayed the Emperor at the beginning of the Imperium. And these engagements can wear on a Space Marine's mind, and it's a chaplain's job to allay those burdens and doubts and make sure their charges are not conflicted or potentially tainted by the forces of chaos. And they are part of a division of the chapter called the Reclusium. And there is a chief chaplain that is usually bestowed the title of Reclusiarch. Now, they are usually also the ones who go through the process of choosing suitable candidates from the worlds that they recruit from, and then they'll pass them over to the Apothecarian, and the Apothecaries are the ones that actually perform the procedures to augment a adolescent teen into a Space Marine. And here we have right now is what's known as a Tech Marine. Now, Tech Marines are a little bit different in a Space Marine chapter because they are Space Marines that, during their initial training or throughout the beginning of part of their career, they show an aptitude for machinery. At which point they will be sent to either Mars or their nearest Forge world, whichever one is the most practical, where they will be inducted into the rites of the Adeptus Mechanicum, or otherwise known as the Martian Tech Priests. They are then taught everything they need to know about the way machines work, machine spirits, which are kind of like the souls of a machine, how to repair equipment, how to maintain it, how to create new equipment, and how to replace damaged components. Now, the reason his armor is red, and you see there is one shoulder pad that is a different color, the reason for that is a Tech Marine will paint his armor red to signify the pact and bond between the Adeptus Astartes and the Adeptus Mechanicum. However, they will always leave one shoulder pad in their original color heraldry along with their chapter iconography on that shoulder pad, as it is typically viewed as repainting an entire armor will anger the armor's machine spirit and can cause some really bad effects for the wearer. So that's why they, no matter what branch they are, what part of the chapter they are, one part of the armor will always retain its original heraldry. Next before you we have a Librarian. Now, Librarians are the psychers of the Space Marine. They possess psychic abilities and they are taught how to use them in battle and how to control them and how to resist the temptation of chaos. The training they go through is more rigorous and more intense than a standard Space Marines training because they have to be mentally conditioned to use their abilities while withstanding the perils of the warp that will threaten them while they use them. To help them safeguard themselves against these powers, they do wear a device known as a psychic hood, which, as you can actually see here, this is what a psychic hood typically looks like. Now, this can be worn with a helmet, or it can be worn unhelmeted like this Librarian here. And not only are they battle psychers and very capable warriors in combat, but it's also a librarian's job, and the librarius, which they belong to within the chapter's job, to maintain the chapter's records, their lore, their history, their archive. Is basically any kind of data collection or data transcription is done by the librarius. And then before us, we have a very, very well-known character in the Warhammer universe. His name is Gabriel Angelos. Now, he is a chapter master of the Bloodraven Space Marine chapter. Now, one thing to note is chapter masters are the leaders of the chapter, and typically a chapter master will appoint a successor to take up his mantle should he fall in battle. However, if that is not done, or depending on the chapter's traditions, there might be a ruling of all the company captains or an inner circle or something of that nature that will elect a new chapter master. And chapter masters are the absolute leader of a chapter. Their word is law within the chapter. They typically only go into battle when it is of vital importance to the chapter and the Imperium, because even though they're bred for war and they do relish fighting, they do also have that role they have to the chapter as a whole, which is to try to stay alive for as long as possible. The oldest chapter master on record as of right now is Commander Dante of the Blood Angels. He is, I believe, around 900 years old, which is the oldest known Space Marine ever. Outside of being a dreadnought, which we'll cover what those are much later on in a further series. Now, what you're looking at here is a standard Codex Astartes chapter organization. And what I mean by standard Codex Astartes is most chapters adhere to the Codex Astartes, which is what broke them up into chapters to begin with after the Civil War known as the Horus Heresy, which we'll be covering a little bit about that time frame in the next video, the history of the Space Marines. And the Codex Astartes laid down how a chapter should be organized, how it should function, how it should field units, what roles they should be, and most chapters adhere to this. Now, some will have slight divergences depending upon their homeworld and the culture they recruit from. They might do things a little differently, or they might do things completely differently. It depends on the chapter, really. Most chapters do adhere to the Codex when it comes to their organization, and they just stick with that. So, as you can see right now, we have, chapter command, which is the chapter master, and then we have separate the chapter specialist, which is our armory, which is what the Tech Marine belongs to, and this is usually led by a senior Tech Marine known as the Master of the Forge. Over here we have the Librarius, which are the librarians therein, and they are led by a Chief Librarian. The Reclusium, where the chaplains operate within, and as I stated before, they're led by a Reclusiarch. And then we have the Apothecarian, which is where the apothecaries operate, and they are typically not all confined to a chapter stronghold or fortress monastery. They are typically seated throughout the different companies, and they operate as field medics as well as surgeons, and they're also, like I said, responsible for performing the operations to transform a aspirant into a Space Marine. Now, Codex Astartes standard chapter has 4 battle companies, and I do have the first company listed here just because I couldn't fit it anywhere else. Now, the first company is in a separate category of its own. It comprises entirely of the senior veterans. These are Space Marines who have served above and beyond the call of duty, and they are elevated to first company status. It's the elite of the elite. Most chapters it's this way. Some chapters being in the first company is not really an honor. It has some stigmata to it, but most time it's short of becoming like chapter master is the highest honor you can attain. Now they do have 4 battle companies that range from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th company. These are the companies that will typically be deployed throughout a war zone, or any war zone. They might be deployed in company strength, or they might be deployed in what's known as demi-company strength, which is just a selection of units from the battle company and the reserve company. Now, the reserve companies are more specialized. The battle companies are able to be tactically adaptive and flexible in combat to achieve any objectives they have. The reserve companies typically specialize in one specific form of combat or another. For example, the 9th company, if I'm not mistaken, is traditionally the heavy support squad, meaning long-range heavy firepower, devastator squads, man-portable heavy weapons, things of that nature are primarily fielded in this company. And after a Space Marine, quote-unquote, graduates from the Scout Company, the 10th Company, they'll go into the 9th Company. From there, they'll go on to the 8th Company, which specializes in close-quarters assault. And you'll see a lot of jump pack equipped Marines in this company, Assault Marines. And from there, they just keep progressing up until they reach a battle company of their own. Now, the reserve companies can be deployed in full, but it's very rarely done. It's only done in emergencies or when it's an all-hands-on-deck kind of situation. Now, the 10th company is the Scout Company. This is the first company any Space Marine will go into while they're gone through the first round of surgeries and they're undergoing the changes that will turn them into a Space Marine. Here they'll learn combat experience from being in actual combat. They'll learn how to live inside of their enhanced bodies because it is a little disconcerting from a normal human form. And once they complete their training there, they will go ahead and, like I said, move up to one of the other companies. Now, recently it's been added in with the newest rule set for the Space Marines that the Vanguard forces are kept in the 10th Company. And Vanguard are pretty much infiltration specialists. They operate ahead of the main battle lines. They have a lot of ways to infiltrate, get in behind enemy lines, and wreak havoc. I'm actually building an army of them right now for the Raven Guard chapter, and they're actually pretty cool. I really like that they've added this to the Space Marines ranks. Now, some chapters have been toying with the idea of making a Vanguard-only company because of how effective they can be, but that hasn't been actually put into effect yet and remains to be seen. So, with that, we've gone over the different specializations within a chapter, as well as covering a little bit about the chapter master, and looking over the general organization of a chapter. Now, in the next video, like I said, we'll be going over the history of the Space Marines, and we'll be covering 3 main periods of time. One is the Great Crusade. The second one will be the Horus Heresy, which is the civil war that ended the Great Crusade and led to the Imperium as we know it now. And then the more recent setting, which is known as the Dark Imperium, which brought a lot of changes to the Space Marines as well as the 40k universe itself. So please definitely look forward to that video, and until next time, I will see you all in the grim darkness of the far future.